it's interesting. Our backgrounds were quite different. I think one, I was in a family with siblings and so on, but had this very unusual. As I look back on it, I had no idea it was unusual at the time. Parents, and at the farm, for example, it was a dairy farm, and so we required the extra help. So we would have a resident family with us on the farm, and so we would have an immigrant, probably undocumented immigrant family from Mexico one time. Dad had sprung some the Shimizu family from a detention camp, and had he sprung a young black soldier who was in the brig for having I think attacked his sergeant or something, you know. And so we had all these different people, and they all remained incredibly close to us all until the folks died, I think. But it was what I realized in retrospect, in at least to some extent, was that he was trying to broaden our view. And of course, I was young. I thought that everybody did this. I had no idea. Mm-hmm. And so he was a very good community organizer and was always engaged in. He desegregated Mesa, Arizona, and he was really dealt with Indian affairs, and he was executive secretary of the Arizona Commission of Indian Affairs, and so on. So we had that sort of mosaic, that background, and then Fritz, my Fritz,
yeah,
older brother, he was engaged in geographical research as well. I think with this background, we could only become geographers. I mean, this was, being an accountant was out of the question. We couldn't do. And so Fritz was doing coastal geodetic survey work in the Guianas in South America. And he would write 10-page letters, just all this detail of what he was doing. He had gone out and dug out and it sunk in their prawn. There were, and it was just this. It was so exciting. And then he would send back these books, these British and usually British geography books on the region and so on. And so it never occurred to me not to be a geographer. I mean, that was just, the normal progression of things. And so I went to Arizona State University and sort of where he had done his undergraduate work, and plunged into the geography program. And because the faculty members all knew Fritz well, they would give me these jobs. I was a curator of maps for the university, and so I just loved that, all these maps of the world and so on. And then in my sophomore year, they gave me a TA ship. I didn't know at the time that a TA ship as a sophomore is unusual, in geography. So I was just gone, and I had wanted to do something, go overseas, as Fritz had, and so on. And I thought that I would move on. I'd wanted to go to a university that was maybe a little bit more rigorous, or a school. And so went to Earlham in geology, and then because it had a lot of, Earlham has a lot of Palestinian connections because of the School of Ramallah. Mm-hmm. And so I found that very interesting, and their international programs interesting. And then when the recruiter came, I was just ready to go. but it was interesting that I think that I had sort of plunged into this as a matter of sort of protocol. This is what I was supposed to be doing, without a deep sense of commitment. It was anyway. What changed then was to go into the Peace Corps, and you were. I'm still trying to become socialized so that I can actually talk to people. But you were incredible because you were interested, and you were engaged, and you were even then were a bit of an expediter for me. Yeah. And so I could negotiate my way through society with you by my side. But just that interest, you were always so interested in things, and it became very, very interesting for me, the forays with the Bakhtiari and just traveling around the country, and it really was different. I've traveled with a lot of people, and you are by far my favorite traveling companion in this. And you were mentioning Will's background. Will had a very similar impact on me, that it was sort of, it's difficult to be very passive with Will. You know, you become engaged in everything you're doing with him. If it's making mayonnaise in a grove of cork oak trees in Morocco, or whatever it is, you sort of so engaged in it, and so it was a very interesting situation for me in becoming sort of moving from this sort of somewhat passive mosaic of experience and being sensitized to culture and so on, to sort of moving into the whole Iranian and travel business. But I was, where I think that it differs a little bit is in the impacts on my views later on, was because I've been dealing with Indian affairs and so on through the folks and some of my own work, that I became more and more involved in sort of prehistory and early history and sort of what we see today, how it evolved. And I think that the trip just blew the thing wide open. I mean, it was like plunging into a laboratory, this incredible complex laboratory of all these different cultures and folkways and mores and this sort of thing. And then I think that I attached particularly, and I think it goes back to the Indian work, where we're sort of sensitive to their needs as people who've been marginalized in society. And I was always felt closest to the indigenous people and wherever I'd gone. And so a lot of my work subsequently, because it was in international development and Peace Corps and the unit at the Academy was the Board on Science and Technology for International Development. And so was always sort of dealing with that context of international affairs and international development and so on. But I was not engaged so much in trying to make Europeans of Africans or Middle Easterners or whatever, and was spent most of my academic career, I think, really trying to determine how one can best integrate indigenous and popular culture. And it while valuing the indigenous culture, because I don't see progress and modernization, westernization as inevitabilities. So anyway, I think that's sort of what the impact of the trip on me was, providing this context, this experience, the companionships, this whole range of experiences that fed directly into my interests and growing capabilities.
Well, I think it's correct to say for both of us, this trip, especially along with what preceded it, was life-changing.
It was.
Without question. And
Yeah.
it's been a delight to put this together to share with others to some degree what we experienced.
Right.